Okay, hello everybody. Um, we'll just give a moment for any stragglers to arrive. And if I could get everybody to open up the chat window, because I'm going to be dropping some links in there. And let me just close that thing. Yep. So open up your chat. Be ready to chat. Can you hear me and everything? How about some reactive icons? Can you hear me? Do I exist? I do. Okay. We're at that point in the semester, online learning, right? Hanging in there. So good to see a few kind of thumbs up. Okay, so where are we? Let's get over to some housekeeping stuff. We're gonna look at the origins a tiny bit, and I'm going to show you a couple clips, and we'll use the chat to kind of answer a few questions about that. Then I'm going to talk about postmodernism. So there's a slideshow for that relates to the next film analysis. So we'll look at postmodernism in cinema. And then what happens after that? Let me look at my list here. Then we're going to watch a 30 minutes worth of Cloud Atlas and kind of reconvene after that. So this is a super crazy kind of fragmented film. And so we'll have a look at that as well. So maybe first we'll start with a little kind of review of this Origins movie. Now, in this film, the sort of thing that I've asked you guys to look at is science versus religion. Now, personally, as a general broad stroke, I really hate this movie. I just hate it. I think it works well for sort of framing the science and religion argument, but I find the protagonist really sort of irritating, and this sort of premise a little bit like simplified or sort of binary. You have this kind of like pouting young scientist, and then he has a series of sort of women who are figures in his life, and for me, I find the kind of characters very irritating. Which is not to say that I don't think it's worth watching, but okay, so let me just get a little screen share. So for those of you who just sort of wandered in, open up your chats. We're going to do a very quick kind of, what's it called? Call and response type thing. I'm going to play a clip, ask you a question, write your quickest response possible into the chat. And we'll do about 4 of those. So here's a 51-second clip. I'm going to start with share the sound. Okay, here we go. Okay. Hopefully you can hear that.
What do you believe in?
I'm a scientist. I believe in data.
A scientist? What kind of scientist?
Molecular biology. I'm most fascinated with the eye.
The eye, the eye?
Which is a nice complicated move that they've done with a rig. And I quite like that. Okay, let me get out of here. So he finally believed in God. So this last, I give you this terrible question. What is better, science or religion? Can we have both? And so what do you think is the viewpoint of the director in this film? Which one's better or both? So I'll write that question in the chat. Which one? So it seems like both not totally sure. See, it's mixed. Um, I would kind of be in the not sure. It seems to me like he's sort of saying both because, they're talking about evolution. But then I think it's kind of like science is how things are, but then religion is just unproved science or something. So it seems like he's sort of pro science, but also keeping religion, um, in the fold as well, kind of, especially at the very end. He's definitely, to me, not rejecting religion or spirituality. So there's that. But then he's not rejecting science either, really. You know. Oops, sorry, scenes playing there. So it's kind of when you talk about what's it called, the invented institutions. Science and religion are kind of these two main major institutions. Um, and modern sort of cinema had started to kind of break those down. And once we hit postmodern cinema, um, things kind of get really wacky. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of tackle that. Now, I have a lecture about postmodern cinema, but I wanted to start before I kind of like launch into talking about it, to send you guys off to watch the first 35 minutes of Cloud Atlas, um, which is really confusing. I'm going to show you this thing here first. So this is what I will put kind of on my screen. Okay, so here is the character map of Cloud Atlas. And this isn't that old of a film, but it was like a terrible nosedive at the box office. And it involves, single characters in multiple realities, right? And single characters, gender and race shifting, which is, potentially kind of problematic. But it's what we're looking at in this particular film is trying to figure out all of these realities for one thing, and what the hell is going on, and then what does it mean to sort of see multiple realities and multiple characters. What does that kind of shift mean? So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the link to this film. So you're going to watch the first 30, it's actually, let me just open up the chat here or stop my screen share. I want you to watch up until 33, 35. 33, 35 mark. And then you're going to come back and I have a lecture, and we're going to move through kind of the sections of this movie. So here's the link to Criterion. I think you might need you guys should all have that password already, but let me just make sure that you have that too. Hang on a sec, I'll pull that up. Should be here. Okay, where did I put the darn thing? Hang on a sec, sorry. Where on earth did I put that password? Okay. So go to Criterion on Demand at that link. And okay, I have to go into Leia. Just give me 2 secs. Mm. Mm-hmm. Just about got it. Okay. Okay, here it is. You should all have that anyway already. So it's the website. Go to this link up here. Now, the film is Cloud Atlas. And watch up until the 33 minutes and 35-second mark. And then we're going to kind of have like a little, almost like a quiz sort of what we looked at. And I'm going to sort of place it within the canon of postmodernism, which is really complex. So this film is very hard to watch. There's a lot of different characters and settings. It's epic. So we're just going to skim a little piece of it, a section at the beginning. So 33 minutes and up until 33 minutes and 35 seconds. So I want you to come back to the Zoom. You can leave it open, that's fine. Will you watch this? Just make sure you're muted. So I'm gonna have you all come back at 7:15, and then we're gonna kind of move through what we looked at together, okay? So 7:15 p.m. is your return time. Come back to the Zoom then, and we're gonna try and figure it out, okay? So I will see you there. If anybody has any questions, in the meantime, put them in the chat. I'm going to watch it too, even though I've watched it already before. So, okay, happy watching. I'll see you in about 40 minutes, okay? And make sure you watch it because I'm going to quiz you. Okay. And if you have any issues opening up Criterion on Demand, please let me know in the chat. Okay. I'm going to mute myself now. Oh God, I can't remember his name. The guy from The Matrix who played the evil guy, he agent, whatever his name was. He is one of the characters that you see as the evil character. And then we also have morality shifting. So we have the same actor in different realities, but having different standings in relation to morality. So sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good. And Tom Hanks is kind of a good example of that. You know, he goes from being this like bruiser guy who kind of throws somebody off of a roof to being this guy in the future. And I think, I mean, that's kind of Tom Hanks's face, is this sort of like, I don't know, should I? Maybe I should. That's his sort of facial expression that he sells as an actor, is indecision, right? So when you're watching this film in its entirety, one of the things to look for is the shifting of these actors through these different realities. Are they the same? You know, are they the good guy, the bad guy? Are they, what's the deal? And what's their relationships between the different characters? So there's a lot of shifting, right? On top of that sort of shifting, there's like some of the stuff, and I should probably warn you in this film, there's some offensive stuff in this film. There's some offensive language that you might not see in a film in 2020. And there's some offensive things, but you know, this is in film. So there's even sort of with the shifting morality, do you remember in the beginning, there's this scene where there's the old pianist guy, and then the young guy is there to help him, write his music down. So you have the old guy, and he's sort of like, he's there and he's kind of, I have this song in my mind. And he's an established composer, obviously. He's old, he's, has a beautiful house, he's famous. so he's like, oh, I have this sound, this song in my mind. And so his young assistant, who's sort of auditioning for the job, sits down and plays, almost note for note what he hummed. And he gets very upset and says, oh, you can't do this job, you suck, and is going to kick him out. And then the young pianist kind of takes the melody and embellishes it and turns it into this beautiful song. And then the composer and his wife are like, oh, it's beautiful. And he says, yes, that was what was in my mind. Now, this is a very kind of postmodern situation, because what's happening there is we're seeing the sort of how reality is composed being revealed. So certain people write history books, certain people have accomplishments, but within those simple things, like, oh, this composer wrote this amazing symphony, there's actually a lot of complexity in it in the real world. It might be that the composer came up with part of it, but his assistant who wrote it was a collaborator and came up with more of the song than the actual composer did. So there's this sort of questioning of the authority of reality, the authority of history, and instead of a sort of singular belief system, what we're receiving is multiple belief systems transposed on top of each other. So multiple realities, multiple moralities. And that is kind of basically what postmodernism is all about. It's all about multiple everything. It's all about breaking down hierarchical thought about what is right or wrong, what is, the truth or not truth, and instead replacing it with multiple voices that are all sort of shifting and ambiguous. So maybe maybe I'll go into this lecture, and that'll kind of break down a little bit about the postmodern thing. If you think about like collage, when you cut up a bunch of magazines and stuff when you're a kid and paste them all together, and you might have like a sports magazine and a beauty magazine, and it's all just mashed together. This is postmodernism, right? Like, it's a term that is kind of given a lot of complexity and has a lot of complex elements within it, but it's actually like, it's pretty simple. Like in it's sort of what it really actually is. Okay, hopefully you will be able to see this. Okay, can you give me a what's it called, an icon that you can see this slide that says postmodern cinema? Someone give me a thumbs up or something so I can know you can see this. You see it? Okay, thank you, Zachary. Let me just see if I can make this bigger. Full screen. Okay, yeah, full screen's a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to whip through this, and there's a few examples from films. Okay, sorry, I'm having some technical issues today. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so this should still be here, hopefully. So in the chat, if you have any questions, and if I ask you questions, please keep your chat window open. Okay, so we've looked at modernism, and we're kind of moving into postmodernism now. It's enough's enough, right? So characteristics of postmodern cinema, and we're going to kind of break these down. And you've seen all of these in this clip, almost all of them. We've got fragmentation, intertextuality, metafiction, maximalism, hyperreality, paranoia, no rules, and diversity of perspectives. So fragmentation, the 33 minutes that we just watched, super fragmented, right? What we have is non-linear narrative. It's not like there's, a simple arc in this film that we're looking at. There's multiple narratives. They're not linear. They're all weaving in and out of one another, right? Um, it's not like see Jack run, run Jack run, Jack falls down or whatever. It's just kind of more, there's more layers and you're kind of surfing through it, trying to figure it out. There's no faith in a master narrative. So there's no singular idea driving anything. It's not leading us to a point, it's letting us explore multiple points of view simultaneously. There's no end to find meaning, meaning there's no right answer. There's just different people will interpret different meanings. It's not persuasive. It's not trying to tell us anything. It's not trying to say, oh, in the future there will be replicants that serve consumers. Um, it's not trying to give us a truth. It's just trying to show us different things and allow us to interpret them for ourselves. The author is not the authority, so there's no singular vision. Um, there's multiple kinds of narratives, right? It's all about multiplicity. And there's an acknowledgement of contradictions and paradoxes. So often in postmodern film and art as well, which is kind of my zone of specialty, is more experimental stuff, that you'll see like somebody you'll see something that sort of contradicts itself. So, or a paradox where someone's like, I would never kill another man, and then they just suddenly change their mind and kill somebody. And this is kind of, it's fun and exciting to watch characters break down their belief systems and just suddenly do something random. This is very exciting. And this is also how reality functions. You could do everything in your power to check all of the right boxes, but you still might not get the result that you feel you deserve, right? This is how the world works. It's complicated. So like modernism, there's ideologies like order, rationality, reason, and unity, but they're replaced instead by uncertainty, alienation, and fragmentation. So watching this film, Cloud Atlas, it's a bit alienating. You're like, what is going on? Where am I? Who are these people? And then you sort of get into one narrative and then they take it away, right? So postmodernism accepts chaos and uncertainty because the world is what we live in is kind of filled with chaos and uncertainty and unfairness. When it comes to film and other art forms, it's about accepting that meaning is difficult to define, discover, and even more so, more than anything else, to agree upon. So this is kind of a radical way of thinking, is to accept that. Early sort of postmodern films, I'm sure everybody's seen Pulp Fiction. This is like a kind of 90s film. And in that film, it's like kind of hilarious and pulpy and gory. But it's also, there's like this weird kind of, it's not really focused on any particular character. You go on a ride with one character and then it shifts to another one. And then it shifts to another one, and you're kind of like, oh, huh. At the end, you're like, what happened? And it doesn't give you like one person's personal growth and conclusion. It's more, you're just along for a ride. You get to experience a bunch of crazy characters doing crazy stuff. And then that's it. That's postmodern for sure. Memento, this is also like a kind of a horrible film, but it really embodies postmodernism. And it's a narrative shift between multiple sequences or two sequences, and one's moving forward, one's moving backwards. So it's about breaking up time. Another thing is intertextuality. So when a film references other films, this is very postmodernism. So it's kind of like, you're taking a bunch of eras, throwing them in a blender, and then having them reference themselves. So it often recognizes postmodernism works. And, I don't know if you're going to see that in this Cloud Atlas film or not, if I will even know the references for it, but that it references how it's made, essentially. So it's not like it just comes out of a bubble, isolated from everything. It sort of connects to other forms of culture. So this means referencing other movies, satire, parody, um, or appropriation. Like, so here's some great examples. The movie Scream. It makes fun of itself. The Cabin in the Woods. This is a sort of campy kind of young adult horror movie, and it's essentially taking scenes from other horror movies and then making kind of reference to them and making fun of itself. Same with Spaceballs. This is another sort of 80s and 90s, and this was the sort of like uh, heyday of postmodern film is from the 80s, 90s, and up to the 2000s. Spaceballs is a parody of Star Wars, so you have all these characters playing similar characters to Star Wars, but with comedy instead of, what's it called? Earnestness. Like Star Wars is very earnest. Spaceballs is not earnest. It's just taking the piss out of the genre of Star Wars in general and of how these characters are constructed. So postmodernism, very oftenly, when you say intertextuality, this is a super fancy way of saying it's like making fun of itself or referencing how it was made, uh, and its sort of position in making things. Okay, metafiction. This is also a really postmodern thing. It's when a story, and it's very close to intertextuality, it's when a story acknowledges its own construction within itself. Like when you see an actor who's like doing some role in a TV sitcom, and suddenly they look at the camera and they're like, my dad doesn't like me. This is metafiction. It's like, it's kind of a tacky tool, but it is a thing of postmodern work. And it sort of highlights the construction or the illusion of the film by revealing those techniques. So it's like story within a story. Characters acknowledge that they're characters playing roles. They call that breaking the fourth wall, where an actor looks at you as an audience in the movie theater or in your home watching Netflix, and tries to make contact with you. Like, what's that TV series Decker, the guy who like chops people up and stuff? He often looks out at you and talks to you. And I hate this. I really hate this technique so much. Oh my God. But it is part of postmodernism. And, a lot of people use it really well. Adaptation is a film by Spike Jonze, and it's about this character who is writing a film that he's in. So you see him talking to himself, and it gets really kind of crazy. I'm sure you've all seen some film where you can hear where the character suddenly realizes they're in a film or they're talking to you, like Clueless. Beautiful film. Clueless is a great example of metafiction because in it the character will come out and like narrate to you and connect with you as the audience at home. So this is breaking down the armature of the film. Very postmodern. And there's a lot. A little T. Okay, so maximalism. Here's one I love. Okay, minimalism in early modernist film. You like this. You'd have like one character feeling one thing, doing one thing, striving towards something, and then that happens, and then it's over. So, in maximalism, you just have like extravagant, massive excess, explosions, tons of different characters with crazy outfits, a spectacle, an event, lots of, you have CGI armies, you've got like tangents where you go off with one other character and come back, additional themes, all of this long running time, like Lord of the Rings. Like this is like, for sure a great example. You have all of these hobbits, different types of, animals and supernatural characters. You've got demons, caves, like what doesn't it have, in the fantasy genre? It has like every possible character you can imagine, and they're all doing dense stuff. And it's like there's a lot of action, there's a lot of drama, emotion. It's just there's so much of everything that you're just sort of, watching this stuff. Avengers as a sort of franchise or whatever, also very maximalist, Um, some of the films in that group are just total garbage, but there's a lot to look at. So it's fun to watch them because the production value is high and you can get into something because there's so much to experience there. They might not be very memorable, this type of the maximalist stuff. Like it's kind of like a drug, you sit there theater. This is like a really physical experience, maximalism. Another thing of post modernity, and you see this in this Cloud Atlas film that we just watched 30 minutes of, is hyper reality. So, this is, there's a lot of kind of writing about this, the idea of hyper reality. But in hyper reality, there's sort of this idea that there is no reality and no truth and no authenticity or no originality. So, kind of like starting a little bit with the themes of like breaking reality from films like The Matrix, and then bringing it into another sort of zone where you can't tell what reality is a real reality. So you have characters often that are breaking out of one reality into another reality. So, like in The Matrix, and I'm sure you've all seen The Matrix. And if you haven't, by God, watch it. um, there's a character who's basically kind of, I don't know, like a body in a vat that aliens are harvesting, and he wakes up and he realizes that he's in a simulation. In this Cloud Atlas, you have in Korea in the future this replicant, or a cloned female character who exists to staff a store for consumers. So she's basically like the Gap jeans worker of the future. Um, she's sort of woken up or realizes it. What's that new series that Westworld that just came out? I was like totally into that in the early phases of it. I think it was called Westworld. It's also a book series. Kind of trashy, or confusing or alienating. You might not have an emotional connection with these characters, or you might not get a lesson. You might just be totally alienated by watching some postmodern stuff. But I don't know. I like it generally because there's a lot of postmodern science fiction, and so I'm kind of into it. Okay, so hyper reality, Ready Player One is a sort of newish thing, and you have characters that live in virtual reality and in real reality simultaneously. Even the Blair Witch Project. If you haven't seen this, it's a great movie to watch. It's barely watchable. And it's kind of like, is it real? Is it not real? Is it documentary? Is it fiction? You can't really tell, and that's kind of postmodernism. Another thing is paranoia. Okay, so so where modernism dismantled institutions and attempted to create a new kind of world order or a utopia, postmodernism just basically breaks everything down. It's like utopias are bad. Like everything's just totally a mess, basically. And so utopia is always a dystopia, and there's paranoia, there's fear, control, and pessimism, and distrust and skepticism. Those are the sort of mindsets of postmodern film. And even in like Pulp Fiction, you have a lot of people that are sort of like under the influence and afraid that people are going to kill them, or they don't know who the boss is, or there's people like, should I go here or there, indecision, anxiety. These are all the sort of postmodern things that you see. And it could be historical, like trying to figure out a historical event that has multiple versions of it. It could be, like in Children of Men. This is a good sort of dystopian movie where people can't have babies anymore, and then suddenly there's a pregnant person, and everyone's trying to figure that out. But there's sort of just a general feeling of pessimism, and that things aren't as they should be. And right now we're kind of living in a paranoid era, I think, because it's like we're living in a pandemic. I mean, this is a really big deal. It's a huge sort of societal shift, and there's multiple sort of points of view of different people on how to kind of deal with this, right? So we're still in this sort of postmodern zone, I think, very much. Another thing is there's no rules. So a postmodern film doesn't really have rules. It sort of breaks apart hierarchies. So, when I say that a lot of postmodern films and things are trashy, like where sometimes there's no distinction between like high or low or popular culture or, this sort of high culture, as it's called, sort of you'll just see everything all mixed together. And that's kind of what makes it fun, right? Like, and usually also very entertaining. So there's mixing cultures to, this can be super problematic. We see that in films now where you have like, a film that is about a, anime character, and it was written in, one part of the world. And then suddenly you have all these white actors like playing different people, different races, and you see sort of the whitewashing of Hollywood. And this is one of the sort of things that postmodernism has given us, is whitewashing of roles. And so, there's some problematics with this idea of there's no rules and all this kind of stuff, because it means that whomever has more sort of power control uses it. So you see sort of like no rules, like in the Black Panther, you have a sort of anti-hero, hero, sort of someone who's like, like becomes this amazing kind of savior, was sort of in this like morally ambiguous position in the beginning. You see different settings and characters and mixes of cultures. One of the things that you see in science fiction is exoticization of other cultures. So almost all of the science fiction movies, like the majority of them, have this thing where they suddenly have like a Chinatown, and we have those spaces in our cities, but in science fiction, it's used to be like, oh, this is a crazy place. It's Chinatown, and this is like really problematic element of postmodern work as well, which is the like exoticization of other cultures into being a novelty. Um, One thing you do see in postmodernism is sort of diversity. You do see like more different types of characters, same as Cloud Atlas, which is, a problematic movie as well. You do see like people inhabiting different gender bodies, different, you could have, say, the girl with all the gifts, you have this character who's a girl. There's sort of like different shifts of perspectives, and this kind of is still a work in progress, but you do see that it's trying to show you perspectives outside of a singular one that we've usually had within the kind of canon of movie history. If you look in the 50s, it's like you would have all the same kind of protagonists, and as you move forward, we're seeing more different types of protagonists. So this is a positive kind of thing. And the Moonlight, one of the films I sort of gave you guys on the list of options to watch. This is a really cool kind of film of a perspective that you don't normally see, which would be sort of like a gay kind of like guy from Gangs, and the tenderness of that character, instead of the sort of typecasting of like a gang character. You wouldn't see tenderness or sweetness or love in that kind of context usually in the past. So things are kind of breaking apart a little bit. Get Out also, these are sort of, there's this new kind of wave of films that are still like squeezing out their position, and they are sort of, and allegories and for, racism and different things like that. That we're starting to see more movies kind of from directors from different backgrounds tackling the lived experience that's beyond what we used to see in the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. So that's still a work in progress, but you are seeing kind of like more perspectives. And that's something that's in this film, Cloud Atlas, that you do see. You see that kind of breaking apart a little bit what we're used to seeing. Okay, so that's a lot. I'm talking a lot. So now maybe we'll take a little break here. Let me just check what all I was going to do for you guys, make sure I've got it. Oh, yeah, I was going to talk a bit or ask you what you thought about the language. Okay, so from that 33 minutes that we watched of that last film, did you guys notice anything? And in the chat, did you notice anything about the languages that they were speaking? Like we were just barely getting into it. Because I think this next kind of bit after the 33-minute mark is where you really start to see a shift in the language. And I find watching Cloud Atlas, I highly recommend when you watch Cloud Atlas to watch with the subtitles. I don't know how you guys tend to watch films, but I almost always watch with subtitles on just because I find it's like it helps me kind of absorb the information. So I'm going to give you now, keep open back up. Hopefully you still have it open. You may not. Keep this Cloud Atlas open. I'm going to have you for the rest of the class watch the rest of it. Let me just make sure that we have the link to that here still. And what I'd like you to do, turn on the subtitles when you watch Cloud Atlas and really study the shifting of the language. So study the shifting of the languages. And kind of, make some notes. This will feed into your sort of last assignment. And I'll kind of set you off with that. So all I want you to do for the rest of the class is watch this film. This is a huge, heavy duty, long film. So, it's like 8 o'clock here. You still probably have 2 hours and 50 minutes of this bloody movie to watch, which is a lot. But just keep an eye on the sort of the language, like what's happening in the languages. Watch it with subtitles, and then you'll see the way that the words are shifting through the different eras is super interesting. And it talks about the multiplicity, different layers of text. And it really kind of reveals like how our reality is shaped by the like time period that we're in. Like I'm going to be a different person in 10 years. Like you're more advanced to this current era than I am culturally, because I'm already sort of like becoming older. So I belong more to the past than you. And so this is like a really interesting type of thing in terms of like how you can learn from different eras, but also how different eras and the belief systems within them are defined by those time periods. So this is, the most interesting element of this film is not so much what's going on in the multiple realities, but the whole of the parts, what it means to present us with multiple realities. Okay, so I'm going to send you off to watch the rest of this and make some notes on the language, turn the subtitles on. This will kind of help you figure it out. And I'm going to upload, what's it called? This presentation that I've given so that you'll have it to reference for your final sort of analyses or whatever. And that's pretty much it for today. So next week, we will actually have a quick 30-minute class. So be warned, and I will email everybody about that. But for now, make sure you've uploaded your last assignments. Do that, please, unless you've spoken with me directly. And that's it for now. So I'm going to send you off with this to watch and look at the language stuff, and have a good rest of night. If you have any questions, I'm going to hang around here for a little bit, and you can ask me. So that's it for tonight. Watch a bit more of Cloud Atlas. Okay. And I will be posting the next analysis really soon. I just wanted to look at a few more of yours to sort of help me figure out specifically what questions I wanted to add to it. So there's that. Okay, so bye everybody. Hopefully you have